These days, everyone knows Kirkcudbright as the artist's town, and if we're aware of a novel set here, it's probably the 1931 Dorothy L. Sayers story about Lord Peter Wimsey, The 5 Red Herrings. But I'm here to reveal that there's an earlier famous mystery novel set in Kirkcudbright. It was written by an author who in his own lifetime was even more famous than Dorothy L. Sayers, and he was Galloway born and bred. That author is Samuel Rutherford Crockett, although growing up in Balmagee and Castle Douglas in the 1860s and 70s, he was just known as Sam Crockett. While I don't assume that you're familiar with his work, or that you even know who he is, if you want to know more about his background, I suggest you explore the Galloway Raiders website or YouTube channel, where there's a lot of information. For this talk, though, I'll just say that Crockett's rise to fame as a novelist came in the 1890s, and observe that he's credited with causing the first tourist boom in Galloway, which was known as Crockett Country for marketing purposes well until the Second World War. Crockett tells of the relationship between himself and Kirkcudbright in Chapter 10 of Raiderland, published in 1904.
I was a Castle Douglas boy, yet I knew no one in Kirkcudbright, only 10 miles away. I could not have believed that there was anyone in it worth knowing. The solitary schoolboy, Lawrence Kay, who went daily from our town in Kirkcudbright Academy, was looked upon as a kind of daring Stanley, familiar to an unholy degree with the darkest Africa at the mouth of the Dee. Even now, I experience a pleasant foreign flavour when I visit the seat of county government. It is easy to do one's work there, as in a foreign land. There are not the frequent invasions of friends who cannot be denied. In the quaint and excellent Selkirk Arms, under Mrs. Carter's fostering care, I wrote some part of The Lilac Sunbonnet, and there is a grateful, slumberous quiet which rests the very soul about the bridge and the quay. Or better still, along the burgh ashore and by the sea-girt Ross. I remember as a lad sitting dreaming on a seat by the sea edge at St. Mary's Isle, a writing block on my knee. An old gentleman came and sat down beside me. I put away my scribbling somewhat hastily, and the old gentleman with the big worn leather patches on his shooting coat asked me if I had been sketching. "No," said I, "only trying to write." "Writing of what?" he demanded abruptly. "Verses," I answered, blushing, for at 15 one blushes at everything. "What are they about?" was the next question. "Paul Jones," said I, "but I know very little about him." "Read them to me." I read, happily. I had not proceeded very far before I came to the end. The trial was short. The old gentleman smiled good-humouredly. "Where did you get your information?" said he. "Out of the history of Galloway." "I think I can do better for you than that," he said, musing. "Where are you staying?" I told him it was a farm in the neighbourhood. "Well, wait here a little," he said. "I will see what I can find." He disappeared into the wood. And after 20 minutes or so, he came back without his gun, but with 2 books under his arm. "Here they are," he said. "You can keep them. I find I have another copy." I declared that I was so much astonished that I forgot to thank him, but he understood, patted me on the shoulder, nodded, and said, smiling, "Good day to you." "Who was that?" I asked of a gamekeeper who had been hovering in the offing during our second interview. "Who is that?" he repeated after me in astonishment. "Do you mean to tell me that you dinna ken?" "No, I don't," I said, "but anyway, he is very kind. He gave me these 2 volumes of the life of Paul Jones." The man stood open-mouthed. "The Yerl gied ye they 2 books? The Yerl?" He could say no more. I left him standing still with dropped jaw, unable to digest his astonishment. I have the books still, and they bear the arms and the autograph of the last Earl of Selkirk.
This passage tells us 2 interesting things. That at 15 Crockett was already trying to write, although it was poetry rather than the prose fiction he became famous for, and that he knew no one in Kirkcudbright. Well, that was to change. One of his best friends growing up was William McGeorge, who became a well-respected artist, and it was through him that Crockett met E.A. Hornell and others, the ones who later became the Glasgow Boys. Fictionalised, they formed the cast of Crockett's 1907 novel set in Kirkcudbright, Little Essen. But before we get to that, there's another letter I'd like to share. It was written in Scots to Crockett's friends John and Marion Macmillan.
Selkirk Arms Hotel, Kirkcudbright, May 25th, 1894. My dear friends, Gonna come on ye at ony time of the next or day next week. You'll give me a shakedown, will you know? I'm on the hunt for stuff for a new bookie, and it's likely that I may turn up at Glenhead about Tuesday or Wednesday. Likely Tuesday. I'll hae to gang awa again on Saturday to get the train at Newton Stewart, about 11 o'clock in the forenoon, for I'm on to be hame. I'm no sure what na road I'll come yet, but it will be ower the hills, maybe frae Dalmellington, maybe frae Bar, and maybe frae Carspairn. But Glenhead is my mark in ony case. I hae escaped papers and letters to be sent to ye, so gin ony turn up, they can just bide till I come for them. With all regard and anticipation, ever truly your friend, S.R.C. P.S. I'm going awa to preach in Dr. White's in Edinburgh on Sabbath.
1894 was the year Crockett burst onto the publishing scene, with no fewer than 4 works published by T. Fisher Unwin, as follow-ups to his best-selling 1893 collection of short stories titled The Stickit Minister and Other Common Men. These 4 books were The Raiders, Mad Sir Utrecht of the Hills, The Play Actress, and The Lilac Sunbonnet, which he mentioned in the letter. In the summer of 1894, Crockett was working on a Covenanting novel, which would first be published in serial form, as most of his work was, and then as Men of the Moss Hags in 1895. Glenhead Farm was a very significant location in his fiction, and John Macmillan went out in the hills with Crockett to research locations both for the Raiders and for Men of the Moss Hags. Another key location in Men of the Moss Hags, and several other Crockett stories, is Kirkcudbright Jail. There's a large collection of letters from Crockett to the Macmillans in the Hornell Library. It serves as a testament to the friendship, which lasted his whole life, and opens the door on a perhaps surprising connection between Crockett and Hornell, to which we now turn.